Ambassador Lyrith of the Ketheri Dominion had faced interstellar tribunals, pirate sieges, and once a ceremonial duel conducted entirely through telepathic poetry. None of those experiences prepared her for the horrifying realization that she could not walk across a carpeted human floor without wincing. The swelling between her legs had reached what she clinically categorized as catastrophic expansion. She gripped the edge of the polished wooden table in her temporary Earth apartment, breathing slowly through perfectly replicated human lungs. Her disguise was flawless, skin tone calibrated, pulse steady, hair arranged in the casual asymmetry currently fashionable in this city. Internally, however, 3 secondary neural nodes were flashing emergency alerts. This was how it ended. Not in war, not in diplomacy, not even in scandal, but in swelling. Hours earlier, she had been seated at a diplomatic banquet celebrating strengthened ties between humanity and the Ketheri Dominion. Earth officials had seemed determined to prove their cultural worth through something called authentic buffalo wings. The dish had been introduced with alarming pride. "They're spicy," one of the human delegates warned cheerfully. Lyrith, who had studied 12,000 pages of human behavioral psychology, understood that the word spicy in this context meant socially significant. A challenge, a ritual, a dominance display disguised as cuisine. She had smiled with regal confidence. "I assure you, my physiology is more than capable." This had been technically true. Her physiology was capable of surviving vacuum exposure for up to 6 minutes. It had not, however, been tested against capsaicin. The first bite had felt warm, interesting, stimulating. The humans around her had begun to sweat almost immediately, laughing and reaching for glasses of milk. Milk, she had noted, was apparently medicinal. She did not reach for milk. She was an ambassador. She consumed a second wing, then a third. The cheering grew louder. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, "She's handling it better than you, Mark." Mark appeared ashamed. Lyrith had felt triumphant. Approximately 47 minutes later, while delivering a poised speech about cooperative planetary infrastructure, she began to detect a localized heat concentration in her lower anatomy. At first, she attributed it to human gravity. Earth's gravitational pull was 0.08 stronger than her homeworld's. Mild fluid redistribution was expected. By the time she returned to her apartment, the heat had evolved into pressure. By the time she attempted to step out of her shoes, the pressure had become swelling. Now, standing in the quiet room, she tested her balance. 1 step forward. Pain. Not lethal. Not organ rupture. But significant. Her internal biological translator raced through possibilities. Allergic reaction. Parasitic infiltration. Reproductive organ mutation. Her species treated reproductive swelling with extreme seriousness. Among the Ketheri, such changes signaled either imminent mating season or catastrophic hormonal collapse. Neither scenario was acceptable during diplomatic assignment. Her mind spiraled. Had Earth cuisine triggered a mating cycle? Had she publicly signaled reproductive readiness in front of multiple planetary representatives? Her secondary eyelids threatened to deploy beneath her human disguise. This could destabilize negotiations. She attempted another step toward the bedroom and hissed softly through clenched teeth. The sensation intensified with movement. Friction aggravated it. Her internal temperature regulation spiked in response. This was biological warfare disguised as poultry. With controlled precision, she accessed her secure diplomatic channel. Protocol dictated secrecy in cases of anatomical compromise. She could not alert her superiors unless mortality risk exceeded 12%. Was this 12%? She attempted to sit. Even sitting required caution. Her pride wrestled with practicality for exactly 9 seconds. Then she requested a discreet medical consultation through the Human Diplomatic Liaison Network. The response was faster than expected. "Nearest available physician assigned," the system replied. "Dr. Ethan Hale." 20 minutes. 20 minutes. She had survived orbital bombardments with more composure. When the clinic doors slid open to admit her, she maintained upright posture through sheer willpower. The human receptionist glanced at her elegant attire, diplomatic insignia subtly pinned at her collar. Appointment for Ambassador Lyrith? Yes, she replied, voice carefully neutral. She walked with measured steps. Not limping. Certainly not limping. Inside the examination room, she allowed herself to exhale. Moments later, the physician entered. He was taller than average, dark-haired, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. His expression carried neither awe nor intimidation, only professional alertness. Ambassador, he greeted calmly. I'm Dr. Hale. I understand you requested discretion. His voice was steady, grounded, irritatingly composed. Yes, she said. This matter is sensitive. He nodded once and set a tablet on the counter. Tell me what's going on. She studied him carefully. Humans were notoriously reactive about reproductive topics. Embarrassment cues included elevated heart rate, pupil dilation, and sudden fascination with ceilings. I am experiencing acute swelling, she said carefully, in a lower anatomical region. His expression did not change. Any pain? Yes. When did it start? Approximately 47 minutes after consuming a traditional Earth ceremonial protein. One eyebrow lifted slightly. Ceremonial protein. Buffalo wings. Understanding flickered across his face. Not alarm. Not horror. Understanding. And the swelling is, he prompted gently. She lowered her voice despite the sealed room. Between my legs. There. It was spoken. She waited for shock. For awkward coughing. For the human male to malfunction under diplomatic pressure. Instead, Dr. Hale blinked once and asked, how many did you eat? Her neural nodes paused. I failed to see how quantity. How many? He repeated patiently. 7. He exhaled softly through his nose, something dangerously close to amusement. Ambassador, he said, retrieving a small penlight. Did anyone offer you milk? She stared at him. Yes. And you declined? Yes. He nodded as though confirming a minor suspicion rather than impending biological collapse. Okay, he said simply. I'm pretty sure you're not dying. Her entire posture stiffened. You cannot possibly determine that without a scan. I can, he replied calmly. But I'll run one anyway. He met her gaze evenly. Sounds like inflammation from capsaicin exposure. She narrowed her eyes. Inflammation. Yeah, he said. Spicy wings. Inflammation, he repeated, as if the word were reassuring instead of absurd. Ambassador Lyrith sat perfectly still on the edge of the examination table, fingers gripping the thin paper lining beneath her. Inflammation, she echoed carefully. You are suggesting that my current state of impaired mobility is irritation? Dr. Hale nodded. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Her secondary neural nodes flared again, not in panic this time, but in disbelief. Doctor, among my people, localized swelling of reproductive adjacent tissue indicates either imminent procreation, systemic failure, or exposure to hostile biochemistry. Yeah, he said mildly, pulling on a pair of gloves. On Earth it usually means you ate something bold and your body's being dramatic about it. My body is not dramatic. He gave her a look that suggested he disagreed, but was too polite to say so. She straightened her shoulders. The heat is intense. The sensitivity increases with friction. My stride length has reduced by approximately 32%. That tracks, he said. Capsaicin binds to pain receptors. It tricks your nervous system into thinking it's on fire. Blood rushes to the area. Swelling happens. It's uncomfortable, but it's temporary. She stared at him. You ingest this compound voluntarily? Very voluntarily. For pleasure? Absolutely. Her eyes narrowed further. You are a species that pursued space travel. You split the atom. You mapped your genome. And yet you consume plant toxins recreationally. He chuckled softly. When you say it like that, we do sound unwell. You are unwell. Probably, he admitted. But we're resilient. He began a careful, professional examination, clinical, efficient, and entirely lacking the ceremonial gravity her species would have assigned to such a vulnerable moment. He asked straightforward questions. Any difficulty breathing?
No.
Rash elsewhere?
No.
Dizziness?
No.
Good, he said. So we're dealing with localized inflammation, not systemic. That's good news. She hesitated. There is no need for surgical intervention? He froze mid-note and looked up. Surgery?
No.
No amputation? His composure cracked just slightly. Definitely not amputation. She released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That is favorable. He reached for a small container and an ice pack. I'm going to apply a topical anti-inflammatory. Then we'll cool the area. Reduce swelling. You'll be walking normally in a day or two. A day or two? She whispered in horror. You'll feel better within hours. Full recovery might take a bit longer. Her species healed cellular damage in minutes. The idea of enduring irritation for hours felt primitive. You tolerate this regularly? She demanded. Oh yeah. People line up for it. Her eyes widened. Line up. There are restaurants that measure spice levels like competitive sport. She blinked. You compete. Every weekend. She shook her head slowly. Your civilization is chaos disguised as progress. He smiled faintly. We prefer passionate. He worked with steady hands, explaining what he was doing before he did it. The gel was cool. Immediate relief bloomed across overheated nerves. Her shoulders lowered involuntarily. That is defective, she admitted. Modern medicine, he said lightly. We're not just reckless eaters. She studied him as he disposed of the gloves. His heart rate remained steady. No signs of intimidation despite her diplomatic rank. No exaggerated deference. He treated her like any other patient. You do not appear concerned, she observed. Should I be? I informed you the swelling was between my legs. And, she faltered. Among my people, that statement would cause reactions. He leaned casually against the counter. Ambassador, I work in medicine. There isn't a part of the human body that surprises me anymore. That is both impressive and unsettling. I get that a lot. She shifted slightly and winced, though less sharply now. There is another complication. Okay. In Kethri physiology, swelling in that region signals reproductive readiness. It is public. He considered that. So, you think you accidentally announced you were looking for a date at the banquet? Her expression was mortified, potentially to the entire diplomatic assembly. He pressed his lips together to keep from laughing. I promise you, nobody interpreted it that way. You cannot guarantee that. I can. Humans are too busy worrying about their own embarrassment to notice subtle biological cues from aliens. That is oddly comforting. He nodded. You're safe from accidental proposals. She exhaled slowly. If my superiors learn I nearly initiated a mating signal due to poultry. Hey, he interrupted gently. You didn't. You just underestimated hot sauce. She looked at him carefully. You are remarkably calm. Comes with the job. Even knowing I am not entirely human? His eyes met hers evenly. I figured. Her breath hitched. You figured, she repeated. You don't blink enough. And you asked if you needed amputation for spicy food. She stared at him, stunned into silence. He shrugged lightly. Relax. Your secret's safe. I don't scare easy. For the first time since the banquet, her internal alarms quieted. You accept this, she said softly. Without panic. Why would I panic? You're in pain. That's the only part that matters in here. Something unfamiliar moved through her chest cavity. Not heat. Not swelling. Something steadier. You humans, she murmured, consume toxins for sport, survive injuries that would cripple other species, and remain composed when confronted with extraterrestrial anatomy. We adapt, he said simply. She watched him prepare another compress, his movements precise, confident. Not once had his gaze carried ridicule or awe. You are certain this is temporary? Very. And my mobility will return? Ambassador, he said with quiet assurance, I promise you. This is just inflammation. She felt the swelling ease further under the cooling treatment. The terror that had gripped her hours ago now seemed almost absurd. Almost. You will not report this? She asked cautiously. Doctor-patient confidentiality, he replied. Even from interstellar empires. Her lips curved despite herself. Your species is reckless. He handed her the compress. And you're dramatic. She held his gaze. Yes, she admitted. Perhaps I am. And for the first time since she had swallowed that seventh wing, she felt something other than fear. She felt safe. Lyrith shifted cautiously on the examination table, her legs still tingling with residual heat from the earlier swelling, though the ice compress and anti-inflammatory gel had begun to work their magic. She had anticipated pain, embarrassment, and possibly humiliation in front of a human medical professional, but what she hadn't expected was curiosity, hers for him, and his for her. Dr. Hale, in turn, maintained a calm, almost teasing patience that unnerved and fascinated her simultaneously. She studied his hands as they moved over the medical instruments, steady and assured, every motion deliberate, every glance thoughtful. It was a subtle display of confidence, one that contrasted sharply with her species' tendency to overreact under stress, which only made her admiration grow. He noticed her gaze and offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. You know, he said, humans recover from this sort of thing surprisingly well. Swelling, irritation, minor injuries, you'd be amazed at what we call normal. He reached for a chart and tapped a few diagrams. Your circulation is returning to baseline nicely. Gravity here doesn't exaggerate swelling as much as it initially did, but your tissues still react differently than you expected. Lyrith leaned forward slightly, intrigued. Her secondary neural nodes were quiet now, allowing her mind to function with clarity. Explain, she said. Explain why your species endures these temporary degradations with such enthusiasm. I do not comprehend the cultural or biological incentive. Dr. Hale chuckled softly. It's complicated. Part tradition, part thrill-seeking, part communal bonding. Humans like to test their limits. Pain, discomfort, mild danger, it's thrilling, but we structure it. And then we recover, stronger in spirit and often in body. You've just observed one minor example. She tilted her head. And this recovery is voluntary? You submit yourselves to potential harm for entertainment. He nodded.
Exactly.
Some of us even compete for it. We call it recreational bravery. His tone carried both pride and amusement, and she found herself laughing quietly despite the lingering irritation. The sound felt foreign to her ears, alien even, but satisfying. The ice compress had done its job, and the warmth of human hands carrying treatment sparked a strange, confusing reaction within her own physiology. She had always known humans were resilient, capable of endurance far beyond what her people expected of lesser species, but seeing it firsthand, seeing the calm steadiness of a man handling what she had assumed was catastrophic, made her pulse quicken in ways unrelated to injury. It was not fear, nor was it anger. It was curiosity, fascination, and a subtle awareness of attraction, a feeling she had rarely, if ever, experienced in professional contexts. You're calm, she said, almost accusingly, her voice lowered in intrigue. Even knowing I am an alien ambassador. Even knowing the nature of my distress. That's because it's manageable, he said simply, his eyes meeting hers evenly. And I treat every patient like a patient, not like a species. You're hurt. I help. His words were simple, but they carried an undeniable weight. In her culture, attention from someone who didn't overreact to distress, someone who treated vulnerability with respect, was rare. Here it was effortless. She tried to shift her legs to a more comfortable position, and the motion reminded her of the heat and swelling that had terrified her only hours before. Your gravity, she murmured, and your circulation, so straightforward, so linear. My homeworld's fluid dynamics are far more complex, and yet humans manage with simplicity. I find it impressive. He laughed lightly, shaking his head. We make do. That's what evolution gives us. We adapt. Resilience is our gift, and our curse. Mostly our gift. He adjusted the compress on her lower anatomy, with gentle precision. "It'll be even better in a few hours. Just a bit more patience." Patience, she repeated, considering the concept. Her species had little practice in allowing processes to unfold without intervention. Everything was calculated, precise, and often mechanical. Yet here she was, witnessing humans enduring, recovering, and thriving, and it made her wonder what else she had misjudged about this planet and its inhabitants. As he continued his treatment, she allowed herself a quiet admission. "I feared I was dying, that I had offended my species, embarrassed myself, and possibly compromised diplomacy." Her voice softened further. "I did not anticipate relief, nor this calm efficiency. Fear tends to exaggerate problems," he said. "Sometimes a little ice and a clear explanation do wonders." He looked up at her with a hint of mischief. "And humans have a habit of laughing at problems once they're under control. It's part of the recovery." She blinked, absorbing this alien philosophy of medicine and humor. "Laugh at problems," she whispered. "Your civilization survives chaos and potential self-destruction by amusement?" He shrugged, hands still steady on the compress. "Something like that. Humor is adaptive. Keeps people grounded." Lyrith exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and admiration settling over her. "Then I must conclude that your species survives by embracing discomfort and laughing at it, while simultaneously tending to each other with steadiness and precision." Her words were almost lyrical, reflecting both respect and a growing sense of warmth she had not anticipated. She observed him closely, his calm presence, the way his movements were precise yet gentle, the quiet confidence radiating from him. There was something undeniably human in it, something she found herself drawn to. A subtle tension had emerged, neither overt nor conscious, but it existed in the space between patient and doctor, alien and human. It was a gentle current, a spark of curiosity that threatened to ignite a deeper fascination. Her physiological systems, once panicked, were now registering something new: awareness, fascination, and a strange warmth she had not yet classified. "You find me fascinating," he said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts, his voice teasing but calm. Lyrith flushed, or at least her human disguise mimicked a flush convincingly. She paused. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I am merely grateful for competence in the face of chaos." "Competence can be attractive," he said simply, still smiling faintly. Her gaze lingered on his hands for a moment longer, noting the strength and steadiness that had calmed her panic, before she allowed herself to laugh softly. "Your species truly is remarkable," she admitted. "You endure toxins, recover from injury, and yet remain composed. And apparently fascinating to visiting ambassadors," he added with a grin. For the first time in hours, Lyrith felt a lightness in her chest, a relief that was not purely physical. The swelling was easing, the heat dissipating, and in its place was curiosity, admiration, and a strange, unspoken connection forming between alien and human, patient and healer, curiosity and composure, chaos and calm. It was, perhaps, a far more remarkable development than surviving 7 wings of extreme spice. By the time Lyrith returned to her temporary residence that evening, the swelling had subsided to a level she could manage without assistance, though her pride was still tenderly bruised. She sank into the chair by the small dining table, pulling her translator device closer and activating a secure line to her diplomatic log. "Entry 47, she murmured to herself. "The Earthling species continues to demonstrate alarming resilience in the face of voluntarily ingested toxins. Observation suggests a combination of adaptive biology and cultural recklessness. Their humor and patience in handling minor physiological crises is extraordinary. I survived what I believed to be a catastrophic biological failure without permanent damage. Recommend further study in human coping mechanisms before assigning additional envoys to gastronomic diplomacy events." She paused, staring at the screen, and allowed herself a small smile, reflecting on the calm efficiency of Dr. Hale. Despite her meticulous reporting, she couldn't suppress a lingering unease. Rumors from the banquet had begun to swirl among the diplomatic community. Mentions of a medical incident involving Ambassador Lyrith had reached her, whispered among aides and assistants. She imagined her superiors, high-ranking Ketheri officials, discovering that she had nearly caused a diplomatic scandal over something as trivial as poultry-based condiments. Her internal neural nodes shivered at the thought. Panic was a familiar emotion, but this particular variant, fear of humiliation, was new, sharp, and vivid. Dr. Hale's voice, calm as ever, resonated in her memory. "Your secret's safe. I don't scare easy." It was both an assurance and a revelation. He had treated her with a composure and respect that transcended rank, species, and cultural expectations. The human approach to care, combining patience, humor, and practicality, was unlike anything she had witnessed in interstellar diplomacy. It made her consider the peculiar elegance of human simplicity, how a species so young in galactic terms could survive and thrive through resilience and ingenuity. A few days later, she found herself making a deliberate return to the clinic. She was armed with an air of professional necessity, claiming that she required a follow-up evaluation to ensure her recovery was complete. Dr. Hale greeted her with the same calm professionalism, though a faint smile hinted that he recognized the personal motivation behind her visit. She was aware of it as well, and allowed herself a subtle acknowledgement of the connection that had grown during their initial encounter. "I come to confirm my recovery," she stated, a hint of formality in her tone that masked her underlying curiosity. "My species has protocols that require verification of restored mobility following unexpected physiological anomalies." Her eyes scanned the room, catching the glint of the instruments and the sterile surfaces that had previously felt alien, but now seemed almost comforting. Dr. Hale nodded, retrieving the necessary supplies to conduct a routine check, though his hands moved with a quiet confidence that suggested familiarity, not fear. "Everything looks good," he said after a brief examination. "Swelling has resolved. No residual inflammation." He placed a hand lightly on the counter, meeting her gaze with calm reassurance. "You're healthy, fully recovered." She allowed herself a small, almost mischievous smile. "I also come to inquire about the proper ingestion of Earth cuisine." Her voice carried a subtle teasing note, reflective of a burgeoning familiarity that had developed in the past days. "Clearly, certain spices exceed my physiological tolerance. I require guidance for safe experimentation." He raised an eyebrow, his lips curling in a faint grin. "Safe experimentation," he repeated. "We can start mild. Avoid wings with a heat index above 3 on your first attempt. Gradually increase as you tolerate the compounds." Lyrith considered his words carefully, noting the understated humor that peppered his instructions. "This is a delicate negotiation," she said softly. "I must balance diplomatic propriety with personal curiosity. And culinary survival," he added, lightly tapping the chart that detailed her prior reaction. "We don't want any more dramatic incidents." She laughed quietly, a sound that felt more natural now than it had in days. "Indeed. I cannot afford another episode. My species will not forgive such imprudence." He offered a reassuring nod. "Then we proceed cautiously, step by step." His calm demeanor contrasted perfectly with the chaos she had endured during the banquet, creating a sense of stability she found oddly comforting. As they concluded the follow-up, Lyritha's internal awareness of her own reaction to him grew. She noted his steadiness, his lack of pretension, the ease with which he navigated both her alien physiology and her considerable anxiety. It was an unfamiliar sensation for her, a combination of admiration, fascination, and something more personal. Perhaps it was the subtle pull of connection that transcended species and rank, a quiet bond formed through shared crisis and mutual respect. "You have been most informative," she admitted quietly, her voice low, almost intimate. "Your species possesses a remarkable combination of patience and resilience. I find it difficult to ignore." He tilted his head slightly, a playful glimmer in his eyes. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is a compliment," she said firmly, "and an acknowledgement of my gratitude." There was a moment of silence, filled not with awkwardness, but with a subtle understanding. Between the procedural calm of human medicine and the extraordinary patience of the doctor before her, Lyrith felt a connection that no formal diplomatic protocol could achieve. She realized that, for all the chaos of Earth cuisine and its unintended consequences, she had discovered something more valuable, a human who could remain composed in the face of alien panic, who could treat vulnerability with respect, and who could, perhaps inadvertently, ignite curiosity and admiration in a visiting ambassador. "Next time," Dr. Hale said lightly, "we start with something less dangerous than spicy wings." Lyrith allowed herself a genuine smile, the tension from the previous days dissolving completely. "Agreed," she said softly. "And perhaps you will guide me through the safer rituals of your species' cuisine." His grin widened, one that suggested both humor and a hint of personal interest. "It would be my pleasure." As she departed, she reflected on the absurdity of the initial crisis, the swelling, the panic, the almost catastrophic misjudgment. And yet, despite the chaos, the embarrassment, and the alien misunderstanding of Earth's culinary customs, she felt a warmth in her chest, something entirely unrelated to capsaicin, something far more lasting. It was trust, fascination, and the first spark of connection that promised adventures of a different sort, ones that would challenge not her physiology, but her heart. In the end, it had been spicy wings that brought her to this realization, but it was human steadiness, competence, and quiet humor that had truly captured her attention. And for Ambassador Lyrith, that was far more significant than any temporary swelling.